like living in survival mode, and that was my norm. So for me, I didn't know that I was stressed and that I was like taking on too much, and that finally my body was like screaming at me. That was like my first experience with burnout, but I didn't know anything about burnout. I
Not being able to listen to those body cues when your
hmm
body is in survival, you don't understand how when to slow down, when to rest,
yeah.
right? Because your body is in this fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. Hola, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Heal and Manifest podcast. I am Cynthia Flores. I am your host. And today I have a special guest. We're going to talk about from burnout to balance, really breaking the cycle of burnout for women of color. And we're going to delve deep around what is burnout, how does it show up in our lives, what are some of the barriers, what are some of the challenges that come up that may get in the way with better managing our burnout. And also we are going to be providing tips on how to manage our burnout. So today, as I mentioned, I do have a special host. We're being joined by Jessica Rojas. She is a first-gen Latina and a wellness coach who specializes in work-life balance for high-achieving women of color. She is the founder of Jessica Lynn Wellness, and she really helps women to break free from burnout, overworking, and just really working through the pressures that come up when it comes to navigating life, work, family life, all in between. So with her holistic approach, she really empowers her clients to set boundaries, to prioritize their wellness, and really create sustainable balance so they can really thrive in their careers and in their lives. So today we're going to delve deep into this topic. Jessica, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Of
I'm
course.
excited to finally be in your podcast.
I know it's been a long time coming, and I've told you, I had invited you initially, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna take a little bit of time, and I'm sure life happens, and I'm glad that you're here. I wanted to have you share a little bit of your story, of your experience with burnout. I'm sure that a lot of us listening, we've all experienced burnout at some point in our lives, and even I know that for a lot of us is sometimes periodically in the work that you do and also in the work that I do. This is something that I do see a lot. And
hmm
I know that for Latinas and first generation Latinas and women of color, it really hits differently because there's many different layers that affect the way that we navigate our work and just trying to
hmm
balance these different areas of our lives, right? It's not easy, and there's many challenges and barriers. So I wanted to just maybe start with you sharing a little bit of your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts like from my upbringing, right? So I am eldest daughter of immigrants. My mom, she immigrated here from El Salvador, and then my dad from Mexico. So I'm the eldest daughter, first generation Latina here. And, so a lot of what I grew up with was seeing the importance of working hard, or at least that was instilled in me, right? The importance of you have to work hard, you have to prove that you belong in these spaces, you have to, be the best at everything. So it started that way to the point that like I remember as early as elementary school, maybe like third grade, like thinking about like, oh, I need to go to college. College is like my ticket to be able to change my life, to change the trajectory of my life, my family's life, to make my family sacrifices worth it, right? So as early as like third grade, thinking about this. And so from then on, it's like I'm planning, like, what do I need to do? What are the things that I need to do to set myself up to be college bound? So that looked like like, um, taking some classes that were going to kind of set me apart from like students. I was in like gifted classes in elementary school, and then like more advanced classes in middle school, and then I went to a charter school that was like a college prep charter school. So everything that they did was to prepare you for college. But then in addition to that, like when I was in high school, I started taking community college classes as early as ninth grade because I was like, okay, if I get credits and start taking these classes, then I'm going to set myself apart. I'm going to be like the overachiever. Like college are just, they're not going to be able to say no to me, right? They're going to want to accept me, to give me scholarships and everything. That was my mindset. I was just like so determined that my education was going to be like what was going to change the rest of my life, and it did. And and I got to college. I went to UC Irvine, and then my first semester, maybe it was like the weekend of Thanksgiving, I experienced my first panic attack. Like I kid you not, it was the middle of the night, and I thought I was dying. Like I kind of 911. There was no one in the dorms, so I'm just like scared because it was like I was supposed to go to like family's house the next day, and I experienced this really like a panic attack, or at the time I didn't know what it was. I really felt like I was dying. I called 911. I went to the emergency room, and they're like, oh, it's just, a panic attack, probably from stress. Then, I just didn't understand. Like, I've never had this before.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I saw my PCP, and they're like, oh, it's just maybe you're just going through a lot, and, you know, new to college, new experience, change in environment. But for me, I'm like, I'm working less than before. In high school, I worked throughout all high school. Like I had a part-time job. I was in so many extracurriculars. I was taking college classes. So I'm like, right now, I'm just like in school and I was working part-time too. So I was like, I don't see, like, it's not any different than what I'm used to. And it was, that's like where, I mean, now looking back, now I know that I was like living in survival mode, and that was my norm. So for me, I didn't know that I was stressed and that I was like taking on too much, and that finally my body was like screaming at me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that was like my first experience with burnout, but I didn't know anything about burnout. I didn't know anything other than like, I got diagnosed with like anxiety there. And then I had to navigate my whole adult life with anxiety. I would say like the next big burnout event for me was actually after grad school. So, all of these years after being diagnosed with anxiety, I learned to manage it holistically. I learned to manage it with wellness, like healthy eating, with exercise and meditation and yoga, and just like managing it on my own. But then after grad school, it was like my first like big girl job after grad school. So there was like a lot I felt like I needed to prove. I was
Mm-hmm.
working for an organization that was like ran by Harvard doctors, and it's like two of these institutions in Boston that it's like world renowned places. So I was not really seeing people that looked like me. And I started experiencing, and what I realized too in college, experiencing imposter syndrome. So in college, that was like the pattern that I now know, that in both of those occasions, I felt like I had to like push myself because I'm in environments where people don't look like me. They might have different life experiences that I feel behind. And then I'm like, I need to prove that I belong here. So that was like the overwork, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, and that, burnout event after grad school, that like led to like debilitating anxiety. Like I would wake up with anxiety, go to bed with anxiety. It was so bad that I was like, I need professional help. I had to get on medication. I was diagnosed with depression, and all of that. And it's just, it came to a realization that it's not worth it to like overwork so much, because what I realized at the time was that I had made everything, my whole identity, about my career, my whole identity about me having my master's of public health, being in this career as a consultant. That was my identity, and I was putting my all my efforts on that. And it's just like I realized I needed to really focus on like my health and my wellness. And more beyond what I was thinking because I'm like, well, I work out 5 days a week. I go to CrossFit 5 days a week. I meal prep. I eat healthy. I walk. I always hit my my like
It's
10 to 13K, but I'm like, that wasn't enough.
right. And it's the overfunctioning that it
Yes.
doesn't allow us to realize in the moment of really tapping into our bodies and listening to the messages that our body is telling us. And this is something that I do hear a lot. And thanks for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
I can totally relate with a lot of the things that you had shared in terms of, I was just reflecting when you were sharing your story, my experiences starting when I started my career as a therapist. And I can share a little bit later on about that. But you
Hmm.
mentioned a couple of things, right? One is not being able to listen to your body, not being able to listen to those body cues when your
Hmm.
body is in survival, and your body, because when your body is in survival, it's in this constant movement, it's in this constant, it
Hmm.
just, you don't understand how when to slow down, when to rest,
Yeah.
right? Because your body is in this fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. It's in this constant dysregulated state. And I think that going back to your experience, as you mentioned, not listening to those body cues, being so disconnected, even though you're like, I'm over functioning in all these areas, I'm doing
Hmm.
way more, and I'm feeling okay. But internally, there's just clearly you're not okay, right? And then you mentioned the feeling like you did, like the sense of lack of belonging, right? This is something that comes
Hmm.
up a lot. And even in the immigrant experience, being first gen, right, you're merging two different cultures, two different worlds. And sometimes you go out in the education system and you don't feel like you look like the other kids. There's maybe some bullying, maybe there's some comparison that happens at a very subconscious level, not only from you, but from your teachers or your professors, etc.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of that. And also, you've talked about the family obligations. These are also some of the challenges and barriers that come up, and feeling like you have to meet your parents' dreams, especially if they're migrated here to provide a better life, um, in all aspects, right? Feeling like this sense of responsibility to do more for them, right? And prove that you can do it, that you're living the either the American dream, or that you're making it happen, right? So you mentioned all of these different challenges and barriers, and I would say these are more of the cultural and societal barriers that we
Hmm.
internalize, and the messages that a lot of women of color and first gen Latinas experience as we're navigating burnout. But what do you think are other barriers and challenges that come up when it comes to burnout, and more so on like the narratives, right? The limiting beliefs associated to like this over functioning. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like definitely like the culture expectations. Yes. So like the expectation that you need to be the best so that you're not overlooked, that you need to be do the best job because that is how, like our parents survived, right? So they needed to be like the best at the thing they were doing when when you immigrate to the US, it's so difficult for you to get work. It's so difficult for you to get respect. So it's like, if you're the best at what you do, you're always going to be safe, right? You're always going to have a job. So it's like that it's more like you need to be the best for your own safety part. So that's ingrained in us. And the difference is that fortunately, our family moving to this country for, those children of immigrants, we have way more choices that they did. But then those same values or those same stories that worked for them, they're no longer working for us. And yes, maybe some of those things instilled in, people like us that we're working really hard and we're really determined and we get to the places and the careers and the positions that we are now because of that hard work. But then that's also what led us to burnout.
100%. And I think about the expectations to succeed. This
Hmm.
like super high expectation of you have to do XYZ things to succeed in life. and
Hmm.
and a lot of those narratives are definitely tied into our self-worth. Our
Yeah.
self-worth is tied into our achievement. Even as we define, as we're thinking about success and failure, it's almost like this very linear way of thinking. It is very rigid way of thinking. And somehow if we don't meet those expectations, I think that it just, there's this very much internalized shame and guilt and not being successful. And it's also tied
Hmm.
to, I think it's very generalized, but every person is going to have a very unique experience based on their family dynamics. Sometimes perfectionism, some parents can be
Yes.
more demanding in terms of, well, you have to get into this school and you have to do this and that. Like, so there's these different expectations that is internalized of like, i can't I can't mess up. I can't, I have to make sure that I'm perfect, or I make sure that I do everything. It's almost like this self demand, or esa autoexigencia, like being
Hmm.
extra critical and demanding towards yourself. And to the point where it leads to, you can't say no, you can't set boundaries, you have to suppress your personal needs um, and boundaries to meet these other societal, cultural, and family expectations, right? So it's almost like
Yeah.
this, navigating this internal conflict of enmeshment, right? Family dynamics. We talk about family enmeshment when there's no boundaries, almost like the parents' expectations become your own. What parents or the family perception of you becomes your own identity and your own perceptions and your self
Yeah.
concept. So there's that. And of course, I did want to add to just like the gender roles and the norms. I think that those play a big part of this. And especially because as women, Latinas, first gen women of color, I think we've been conditioned to give more, to do more, to be like over functioning, and to follow almost
Hmm.
like these traditional gender roles of caring, of nurturing, and doing more,
Yes.
right? And this may look, not only when I think about burnout, I think about career work burnout, but we don't often talk about the burnout that comes from managing like the family, like holding, sustaining, nurturing the family.
Hmm.
And I think a lot in the Latino community, for Latinas, we take on a lot of that role subconsciously, whether we like it or not. It's like we're trying to nurture, we're trying to take care of everybody else but ourselves. And where does that lead? That leads to self abandonment, neglecting our bodies, neglecting our body cues, neglecting our health, physical, psychological, mental, emotional, spiritual, to the point where it leads to burnout. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, no, no, those are definitely, I'm like everything you were saying, I'm like, yes, 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 all those points. Yeah, we're taught that we need to be there for others, and the in the Latino community, Marianismo, so that expectation that as a woman you have to take care of everyone and prioritize caregiving over your personal needs, otherwise you're selfish, right? So it's like at home, the cooking, the cleaning, the taking care of everyone else. So even if you have a full-time job, you have all the responsibilities, you get home, it's expected that you're going to take care of everything. You're taking care of the home, you're taking care of everyone else. I mean, you learn as young when you're little, like, oh, go serve your uncles or go serve your family members, right? How the women, they're expected to do that, while the men, they get to be men, they get to enjoy it. And not that they don't have their own unique experiences and challenges, but for us, at least for women, we are expected to be taking care of everyone and putting everyone's needs above our own. And like the point you made about how is that seen in the workplace, like that looks like we excel and we get those manager roles, we get all of this extra work because we're good workers, right? We are taught from day one to be good workers. So we're good workers. That helps with the promotions, and it helps with leading teams, you are the one that's picking up people's slack. You're the one mentoring others. You take all of that emotional labor. Um, and then they also expect for you, oh, you're the Latina, so you're going to be managing the diversity and inclusion initiatives or all of these things that you are voluntold for. And if, of course, you're like, yes, I want better circumstances or better policies for my people, but it's like you're not being rewarded, you're not being acknowledged, you're not being paid more by doing these extra work. And then that's where like the, oh, I can't say no because then I look like I'm not a team player. I can't say no because then, I am not showing the value that I bring. Or, I can't say no because they're going to be like, well, she's not committed to this.
Yes, and it made me think as we're thinking about different roles and how it translates from the family dynamic and the family system, which it
Mm-hmm.
starts there, to be honest, in the narratives and the limiting beliefs that we inherit intergenerationally. And it made me think, and then how it translates to the workforce or in other areas, in your relationships, romantic relationships. It
Mm-hmm.
translates to your friendships. It translates to your career and your work. But it made me think that as we kind of carry this superwoman complex, la salvadora, la que va a ayudar en todo, just the one who's like fixing, healing, everything, the superwoman, where we're caregivers, we're giving, and kind of like being the la mamá de los pollitos,
Yes.
the one's like, all right, let's get together, keeping everything together. And how I was thinking how it also manifests in the workforce, in the workplace, and in your career. It's the perfectionism, the over self
Mm-hmm.
criticism, the negative self talk, the always putting
Mm-hmm.
yourself down, the not feeling like you belong there, the not feeling like you're deserving or worthy of deserving to being in those spaces or to being in that level in your career. The self neglect of not taking care of prioritizing your
Yeah.
emotional, physical needs, and also not setting boundaries, right, in the workplace, not being able to say no because you're afraid of disappointing, you're afraid of retaliation, repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this also comes back to the narrative of fear of don't want to be disrespectful, and also the fear of authority figures, which I want to do an episode on that because this comes up a lot for Latinas and women of color. So that way we don't speak up. So also not
Mm-hmm.
speaking up, not advocating for oneself, not expressing your opinions, not sharing feedback. So avoiding
Yeah.
conflict at all
Like you don't
costs.
want to rock the boat or come across as difficult, especially
Yeah.
for Latinas, Black women, people that where they're the stereotypes that we might be difficult people to work with. So like if you know, raise your voice, then you're being aggressive. You're getting your
Yeah.
attitude. It's just like, one for our safety, we've been taught like, calladita te ves más bonita, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just don't be the difficult one. Keep your head down, be quiet, and just do a good work.
Exactly. I can remember all of the times that my mom would say that, in terms of like, but I know that in terms of like, don't speak up, don't say anything,
Mm-hmm.
just be respectful. When the reality is like, showing up for myself is not disrespectful. Showing up for myself is respecting myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing up in a way that um, I need in order for me to succeed,
Yeah.
in order for me to make this work sustainable. And the reality is, yeah, it's all of these different narratives, right? The fear of being rude or disrespectful or being seen as problematic, like the angry Latina
Mm-hmm.
or the angry woman who's just always complaining, which
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, when we're thinking about systemic issues in the workplace, there's a lot of machismo that goes on
Mm-hmm.
in the workplace, and I just definitely wanted to mention that because we see
Yeah,
it like
especially in like male dominated
100%,
areas
a hundred
and
percent.
industries. Yeah.
we see it. We see the inequalities of women,
Hmm.
Latina women of color not being paid enough, being overworked. Because we care, because we want to support and make a difference and make an impact, and therefore we're not advocating for what we need.
Yeah. And you may be doing the same job as like your white male counterpart, but you're getting paid less. And then if you bring it up as, oh, well, he negotiated, but then Latinas are not taught to negotiate. And then, or it goes back to the conditioning. It's like, you should be grateful that you even have a job, right? That's what's ingrained. That like, so for me now, any job that I ever, any offer, anything, I always negotiate because it's like, what would, a white man do? And we're just as qualified, sometimes even way more qualified than
Mhm.
people making more money than us. And um, it's just in these spaces, they take advantage of that fact. She's not going to negotiate. I'm going to lowball her, you know?
Exactly.
And that's just the, the way that it's been built to keep us getting paid less, to keep us working harder than everyone else.
100%. And I wanted to just kind of share some of the symptoms or how burnout may look for
Hmm.
Latinas and women of color. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that? In terms
Yeah.
of
So
symptoms or, physically, emotionally, how does that look?
yeah. And I'm glad that you like talked about physically, emotionally, and everything, because I feel like so many people, they think that burning out is when you are physically feeling exhausted for long periods of time, right? Or maybe you
Hmm.
have a breakdown or your body is shutting off. But it's more than that. It's mental health wise. For me, it was anxiety and depression. And then I had those physical symptoms, right? So you can have the physical symptoms too, the like shortness of breath, fatigue, brain fog, where you wake up and that anxiety that's like both physically felt and mentally felt, right? You can maybe experience some weight gain or some weight loss, maybe loss in appetite. There's so many people that don't even realize it. They're not eating or not drinking enough water, not moving, and then all that piled up can lead to other conditions. I have a client that one of the reasons she came to me was because she is a young woman. She is generally healthy, and she had a blood clot in her leg from like sitting too long and not getting up. And then she's like, I would forget to eat, I would forget to drink water, I would forget to get up and do basic things that you need to function as a human being, right? So it's just like it, it's sad that it shouldn't be a panic attack or
Hmm.
depression or a health scare to lead you to like, hey, wake up. I've been screaming, the alarms have been going off and you've been ignoring it. And like what you said with disconnecting with the body, we especially in survival mode, we're just always go go go, that feels normal, that when we do hear those alarms go off, we ignore them and we've just pushed through, learning that work through it, just push through, you can rest later.
Yeah.
Mentality is what you start dissociating from your body. You stop paying attention to the body cues that you're having, and those physical, mental, and then like spiritually too. Like you could maybe be feeling despair, loss and hope, and like feeling like nothing matters, like you have no motivation. Like there's just, it affects like all different areas of your mind, body, and soul.
100%. And thanks for naming. I think you named definitely a lot of them. And when it comes to the spiritual too, it's also the lack of not feeling enough or feeling kind of this void, but also this
Hmm.
no purpose, almost like this lack of purpose or impact, right? What am
Yes.
I doing with my life? Where am I going? But almost feeling, as you mentioned, Bear, a lot of hopelessness or helplessness and feeling like lost without direction. I think that that's something that comes up a lot. And I felt like that before, kind of like this despair, as you mentioned, and I wanted to just definitely come back to the somatic symptoms because I have an experience with burnout. And of course, in doing this work, I was newly launched into my my career. I was like, really kind of, okay, so here's a couple of clients. And this was when I was working in community mental health. I
Hmm.
was newly in the field, inexperienced, and I was like, all right, I'm going to conquer the world. I'm going to make a difference. All excited. And that was great because
Bright-eyed, bushy tail.
I mean, I continue to feel that way. I still feel excited and I'm very passionate in the work that I do. And for me, it is a life purpose. It is a soul purpose. But I realize now that I have to prioritize myself because if I don't, I can't pour on an empty cup. I have to
Hmm.
give myself. And I know sometimes we're taught that prioritizing ourselves is selfish and it's all this like narrative that
Yes.
we hear, but we have to really unlearn that and reframe that for ourselves and reclaim our power back by reframing and reminding ourselves that that's not true, right? Because for me, I struggled a lot with low back pain, and it started, I realized, at the
Mm.
beginning of my career. I think that I was at a point in my career where I obviously working with a lot of trauma. I felt a lot of despair, somatic symptoms, upper. For me, it's like my back feels it. Like it's telling me my
Hmm.
upper back, my lower back, my gut, my stomach, my hair, like you can just sense, I could just sense it that there's something. Anxiety, like difficulty
Hmm.
sleeping, right? Like waking up in the middle of
Yeah.
the night, thinking about clients, insomnia, all of these things. And for me, I think it came to the point, a breaking point where I couldn't walk and I had to go get an MRI. My low back was just in a lot of pain. And it turned out to be an issue with the discs, and it had a lot to do
Hmm.
with that. But anyways, to the point is that it had to get me to that point for me to realize there's something that I need to change, and I can't continue with just without boundaries, right? Without taking care of my needs and prioritizing myself. But I think for me, the transformative part, it had to do with my mindset. It had to do with
Yeah.
how I kind of navigated, challenges day to day. And for me, during that
Like all
time,
that mind drama.
all the mind drama, all of the limiting beliefs, the self doubt, the not feeling like I'm good enough. It had a
Hmm.
lot to do with imposter syndrome. But honestly, it also had to do with letting go and release of things that I cannot control. And I think
Yeah.
surrenderance, letting go
Hmm.
of the things that are out of my control and focusing, like reclaiming back my energy and my time, that made a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah, and you were saying about feeling it in your back and the somatic symptoms that you feel because it's for some people it's going to be different for everyone.
Mhm.
And even if like say you had a situation where clinically they could tell you, "Oh, it's because you weren't moving or it's because you weren't walking enough or whatever it is," but the root cause is because of all of the extra things because clinically they're not going to or unless you are seen by a doctor that's looking at you like from a holistic point of view, they're not going to be like, oh, you're overworking, your perfectionism, like all that is causing your back pain or it's causing you pain somewhere else, right? But
Mhm.
it's our body, or like they say the body keeps the score, right? So we experience like either trauma or other overwork symptoms in our bodies, and it could
Mhm.
show up in different ways. And clinically, if you just show up like, I have a wrist pain, I have knee pain, I have this pain, they're addressing that, but you're not really getting to what is the root cause of what got you to either overwork, from not getting from your desk, from not drinking water, from being malnourished because you weren't eating enough. It's a lot of those like physical symptoms. It's again like the alarms, like, hey, I've been telling you, and this is the only way you're going to listen.
Yes. And you know what? I was just thinking also about a conversation I was having with my husband the other day. I don't know how it came about, but it was around women having autoimmune conditions, right? Or just like physical illnesses compared to
Hmm.
men. And what I found in research and different studies is that, of course, we tend to have more, hold a lot more in our body somatically because we
Hmm.
hold a lot, we carry a lot of weight. Burnout, our family, children, relationships, like all of these different
Like, yeah,
expectations for
carrying
work,
everyone's emotions and everyone. Yeah.
yeah, carrying everyone's emotions. So almost like it becomes a baggage that if you don't learn how to
Mhm.
release that and regulate that and take care of your needs and prioritize yourself, self boundaries, it's going to take a toll on your health. And this is why we see a lot of women that have more autoimmune conditions, because it's also not only the physical, it's the emotional. When we don't allow ourselves
Mhm.
express ourselves, vocalize our needs, communicate, if we're keeping that silent and inside, it's going to manifest in the body. And
Yeah.
it just like
It's
makes
like
me,
it's coming out somehow.
it's coming out somehow, and it just makes me think about generationally how that has impacted other women in my life. Like my mom, she has a lot of like physical issues and a lot of unhealed trauma, and a lot of other women in my life. And I know where that may be, how what's contributing to that. But going back to what focusing on what I can do to
Mhm.
take care of my needs and without overly sacrificing myself, and I think I wanted to share that because we've all been there. I'm sure we've all been there. Everyone who's listening have experienced some
Yeah.
form of burnout. And I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that and talking about the things that you can control and then surrendering, but then also taking care of you. A lot of times it's like, you're thinking about these boundaries being for other people, but a lot of times these boundaries are for yourself because you don't know how to take care of yourself. You don't know, you've never been modeled that, you've never been taught that, or you've like internalized that self-care is selfish. So it may sound like these boundaries for other people to respect and for other people to like honor, but oftentimes it's for you to respect and for you to honor and for you to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. And nobody knows yourself better than yourself, right?
Exactly.
And I guess moving forward with sharing certain tips around reconnecting with our bodies, being able to really manage burnout, looking at the signs, figuring out what are tangible, actionable things that people can start doing. What are those?
Yes, for me, I approach burnout from a holistic point of view and starting from identifying what is the root cause of the burnout, because burnout is like a symptom of whatever it is that it's leading you to either overwork, to like the relationship you have with work and rest, for the guilt or people pleasing or shame or whatever it is. So it starts by identifying what is the root cause and like digging deep into why have I burned out, or why am I feeling like I'm burning out, or what is causing me to overwork, or like why is it cultural expectations, is it stress, is it self-imposed where it's like I am kind of tying my worth to like my output and like really understanding that. So once we are able to understand like the why of the burnout, then we're able to like rewire those beliefs, right? Whether that means that you need to shift the way that you view work, shift the way that you view rest, just shifting your mindset so that you are no longer thinking I need to work harder to be successful, or it's believing I am enough as I am, believing that I am worthy because that is my birthright, believing that I don't have to prove my worth to anybody, and just detaching your identity from your profession, or from detaching from like, my identity is just being a mother. My identity is just being this career that I have chosen. Like all of those are part of your identity. They are part of you. I guess is maybe not detaching the identity, but detaching your worth from that identity. Um, yeah, and then when you're able to shift your mindset, shifting where like I don't have to overwork to prove that I'm committed to my career.
Mhm.
And I can take care of myself and still be committed to my career. I can take care of myself and still be a good mom. I can take care of myself and still be a good wife, right? And just like reframing your, sorry, go.
No, yeah, I was gonna say I liked everything that you shared, and I was going to add when you're thinking about identifying the root cause, I also, as you mentioned, thinking about it holistically. And of course, I work from a relational aspect, from a systemic
Hmm.
aspect. So understanding that there are things that are also like layered. I think
Hmm.
about, for instance, relationships. How is the health of your relationships? Either your romantic relationship, your partner, your husband, etc., your partner. Like, is there a lot of conflict in there? Is it plus the challenges and demands that you're having at work,
Yeah.
right? How are you managing like your children's behaviors, right? The co-parenting, how is that contributing to also the burnout that you're having, the stress,
Yeah.
the fatigue? How is like managing other responsibilities and like the sense of obligation of having to meet certain standards or expectations of your family? How is that also contributing to your burnout? And just really looking at it from a holistic point of view, as you mentioned, it's really, really important. And yeah, I wanted to share that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said earlier too about seeing like what role do you play in all of these things?
Mhm.
Because then it's okay, what is it that I can control? And then we'll get to creating the systems like in, the next two steps that I was going to mention. But it's also, I need to know what role I'm playing and why I'm fulfilling or feel the need to play that role in that situation. And and then, also that's going to help you see, okay, what are the strategies that I'm going to need to make, or the changes that I need to make, or the boundaries that I need to set with other people, with myself, like after you've been able like to assess all of the stressors or the the reasons why you've experienced that burnout.
Yeah, and I wanted to add the limiting beliefs, going back to the narratives. What is my relationship to work? What is my relationship to the
Hmm.
meaning of success, to the meaning of failure? What is my relationship to these expectations? What is my relationship to this self-sacrificing narrative and limiting belief and guilt and all of these different emotions, right? I think that that's something to really think about, because a lot of it is emotional too, right? And beliefs and emotional. So it's going to take really exploring that and reframing, a lot of reframing these
Hmm.
limiting beliefs, right?
Yeah. And then once you're working on the mindset stuff, the identity work, the shifting of beliefs, like also you need to heal your mind, body, and soul, because if you're already experiencing the burnout right now, or if you're feeling you're burning out, then okay, I need to address the mind, the body, and the soul symptoms, the physical things. Well, that means reconnecting with your body. That could mean focusing on the mind, meditation, therapy, journaling, or body, some light stretching, some yoga, something that is going to be more somatic exercises, right? That
Mm-hmm.
is going to help release all of that tension, release all that. Or if, it was someone like me or someone like you, depending on where the symptoms manifested, like if it was your back, right? Then focusing on healing that part, because you have to also heal the body and
Mm-hmm.
heal if there was an injury, right? You want to focus on healing that as well. And then you
Mm-hmm.
can move on like, okay, I'm working, and these can happen intertwined. I'm working on my mindset right now. I'm healing the areas that have been affected and impacted and are suffering right now. And now I need to create systems so that I can protect my time, my energy, protect the things that matter to me. So that's the setting the boundaries. That
Mm-hmm.
is the creating, changes in your lifestyle, creating a wellness plan, creating just systems and routines or things that are going to help you honor those boundaries, that are going to help protect your time, your energy, so that this doesn't happen again, so that you can start living a different life in a different way and creating your version of work life balance.
I love that. And what advice would you give to our listeners who maybe are going through burnout or are experiencing this right now? What would you like them to know? Anything that you'd want to share with them?
Yeah, I would like for them to know that they're not alone and that a lot of the reason why they've reached to this point is because of a lot of external things and a lot of cultural conditions, societal expectations, and that it's the perfect time. Like right now is the perfect time that if you are experiencing that or feeling like you're going to burn out, for you to take that pause and see, what do I need to do for myself? What do I need? How am I feeling? Then taking the steps that you need to be able to either heal from it or like prevent it. And one of the things that I did want to bring up too that I know we talked about in our prep call before this was the whole embracing the different seasons in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
because there are times that you're gonna have to work harder than other times, and then there's times that are that you can rest, right? And then there's times where all that work is done and you get to like have a balance of like, I'm going to work and play and enjoy my life. So it's like understanding that you don't always have to be like, go, go, go. And telling you that you need to rest doesn't mean that all of a sudden you just drop everything and now is all about resting. But it's like embracing the different seasons in your life and different times that you're gonna have, and then find in this time right now what is my version of work life balance or just my version of balance in general. So right now that I'm a grad student, maybe if you're a grad student and working full time at the same time, and maybe you also have a family, yes, you're going to work more than you did before, but how can I find still time to take care of myself? How can I find or change the way that I'm approaching work, or working on my limiting beliefs that are causing me to work even harder than I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a time for you to rest where it's like I finished a big milestone and now I get to just like relax instead of like the overachiever that a lot of us are, it's like, okay, what's next, right? How about you give
Mm-hmm.
yourself time? I don't need to be right now focusing on what's next. I could just enjoy right now. And then 3 months, 6 months, then I can start planning for my next big milestone. But just knowing that it's okay to just, after a big milestone, for you to really just rest and embrace that, because then you're just going to be like in that cycle and never ends.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And it makes me wonder right now, a question or curious because right now this is a time of like, it's a holiday season. People are resting, wanting to be with family, but there's also in the back is like pressure of like the new year is coming up. You have to have your shit together. You have to have everything together. And you have to have your 2025 plan. And I'm like, gosh, give me a break. Like, like it's okay.
Yeah, and that's like self-imposed societal expectation.
Exactly.
Nothing is different in January 1st than it is in March 1st. So it's getting out of that. Like, yeah, it's fun and it's a perfect time maybe to reflect after the holidays, but it doesn't mean that you need to start on January 1st or the rest of your year is doomed. Like
Right.
that,
So
yeah, that
it's,
is a myth and it's
of
like
course.
self-imposed or society, right?
Yeah, so I would say slow down, enjoy the present
hmm
moment. We only have now, and take time to rest, take time to reflect, to do introspection and reflect how far
hmm
you've come. I know that for me personally, sometimes it's really hard to celebrate my wins or to really think about, okay, well, I did this big thing, just as launching my podcast. And I'm like, yeah, I should celebrate that. I should sit with that, with those feelings, with those sensations. And I definitely want to encourage people to just to do that as well, right? Reflect. I know that all of you who are listening, who are probably here, are going through their healing journey and they're trying to be better human beings. I would like to invite you to take this time to really sit down, reflect, enjoy the moment, and then from there you decide how you want to move forward. But Jessica,
Yes.
thank you so much for this conversation. I love talking to you. This is a great topic. A lot of us relate to it. How can people work with you, find your work?
Yeah, so people can find me on Instagram. It's Jessica Lynn Wellness, or you can visit my website, jessicalynn-wellness.com. And you can learn more about working with me one-on-one. So I typically work with clients in private coaching 3 to 6 months, depending on needs, even longer if that's needed. But yeah, we focus on this. Like my program is more about helping you create the time and have the energy to be present for the things that matter to you. So whatever that is to you, we're going to work on creating your version of work-life balance and your version of the kind of balance in life that you want without having without the need to sacrifice your career.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. And thank you for everyone that tuned in. I appreciate you so much. And I hope that if you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, or other platforms, please put a message, comment, like it, subscribe. It will really help me a lot to continue doing this work. And I hope that you all enjoy. Thank you so much, Jessica, once again, and see you everyone on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.